Hi, I'm Pam with Crafttown Fabrics, and we're going to talk about making some flange binding that will go along with the quilt on the back of the wall. So to get started, we have taken two strips and sewn together, and one of the strips is 1.5 inch. It's this blue, 3/4, which is the red. So what you'll do is you're going to sew them together with a 1/4 inch seam, and then you're going to press it, and you want to press your seam allowance towards the smaller strip. That way whenever you iron it and fold it in half, the seam line is over here, and then you've got your flange where it's easier to sew down on your quilt. So I have started on this little placemat here just for demonstration purposes. I went ahead and sewed a little bit around, but I'm going to finish sewing this down to the mat, and then I'll bring it back over here and I'm going to show you how to put your binding together. So let me just take it over here and sew this down. Now before I get started, whenever you're getting ready to sew your binding on, whenever you get to the end of a corner, you're going to flip it up like this and then bring it back down so that you have a nice crisp corner. Now we've got to the end of this, and first you want to get your measurement of how wide your binding is. So it's 2 3/4. So I lay mine down. Make sure this is nice and flat. Make sure it's straight here. Let's trim that off just a little bit. Throwing my tools around here. Alright, I lay that on top of there and leave that edge up just a little bit. I'm going to take my ruler over here, find my 2 3/4 mark, because you want this to be the same as the width of your binding. I make me a mark so that I can have a cut line. Trim that off. Now you're going to, it's a little tricky to get it fixed right. Lay this down flat. You're going to bring this piece, because you're going to sew it at a diagonal. Bring this piece up like this. Hope you can see this. And you're going to make a diagonal seam there. Now I usually mark mine. It's kind of hard to get it right where you want it, but I use my ruler. Just get you a line on there. Now, put your pin in there to hold it. Now on the flange binding, whenever you sew this, you've got those two seams that you want to make sure that you get matched up. I will usually take a pin, kind of stick down in there and peek in there and just take a look and make sure that they are matched. Leave that in there until you get there. So it's a little tricky, but once you get that flattened out, it's going to go together. Now before you cut that off, you'll want to check it. doesn't look too bad. Now trim your seam. It's kind of awkward because you've got it twisting every which way, but flatten it out there and trim it off. Kind of finger press down that seam. Then you've got your binding, and then you finish sewing this down. So let's do that. Alright. Now you're just going to fold that to the front. Pin this down a little bit. Now whenever I do the flange, I am going to use invisible thread on the top. Then we're going to go over here and sew this down. Now, one thing, whenever you get ready to sew this down, I've got a corner already pinned down. Get it turned around here. You're going to sew in the ditch on this. And you're going to come straight down here. Whenever you get down to this here, this corner, see how this is folded here? You want to put that in and bring that over so that this one's on top, so that it's easier. It's not fighting to go up a seam, it's going right over that seam into that corner where you'll just go straight on down. So that's very helpful whenever you do binding like this. So I'll show you. Now I'm going to change the thread in my... I had never really used the invisible thread till I started doing some of this, but I really like it. I had to put my glasses on to see the needle. One thing about the nylon thread, I tried before to thread it with the needle threader, but it's easier just to stick it in the eye of the needle and pull it through. Alright. I'm going to start about in the middle so that you can see how that corner comes together. Alright. I just want to show you how the corner, I could have got a little bit better right there, but you see what I'm talking about, where you want to sew right in the groove of that to get that flange, and it really looks good. Now on the wall behind me, the pattern that we used for this was Cat's Cradle by Creative Grid. These are the blocks themselves, and we made this quilt. It's about a 60 by 75. we put 16 of these squares together to make a 16-inch block, and then we added an 1.5-inch border, cut it, finished at 1, and then a 5-inch border. But as you can see, right there's a block there, and then if you turn it, see, you've turned it a different way, and then these here, every way you turn it, you can do it different ways. So it's just a matter of which way you want to turn it. But there's our flange binding on this one also. It's not too bad once you try it once, and once you get the hang of it, it's really easy. And it does add just a little bit of something to your quilt. So I hope you've learned something from this and enjoyed the tutorial. And you'll have to watch the tutorial on the other where we make the blocks. Thank you.